Behold the cradle where humanity first stirred from its nomadic slumber. In the sun-scorched plains of southeastern Turkey, on the northern frontier of Upper Mesopotamia, history does not merely linger, it originates. More than 12,000 years ago, long before pyramids pierced the Nile sky or Stonehenge marked the English plain, this land witnessed a revolution so profound it reshaped the destiny of our species. Here, between the Taurus Mountains and the Syrian steppe, between the lifeblood rivers Tigris and Euphrates, humans did something unprecedented. They stopped moving. This region, stretching across modern provinces such as Şanlıurfa, Diyarbakır, and Mardin, forms a critical arc of the Fertile Crescent, the zone long identified by archaeologists as the birthplace of agriculture, architecture, and organized belief. But what emerged here defies older theories that civilization followed farming. Instead, it suggests the opposite. At sites like Göbekli Tepe, dated to around 9600 BCE, hunter-gatherers, still reliant on wild game, raised monumental stone enclosures weighing up to 20 tons each. Towering T-shaped limestone pillars carved with foxes, snakes, vultures, and abstract symbols were arranged in precise circular patterns. There is no evidence of permanent houses, no domesticated crops, no pottery, only ritual. Archaeologists from institutions such as the German Archaeological Institute and UNESCO, which designated Göbekli Tepe a World Heritage Site in 2018, now argue that shared belief systems may have preceded settled life, that religion, ceremony, and communal identity were the engines that pulled humanity toward civilization. And Göbekli Tepe is not alone. Within a 50-kilometer radius, dozens of related Neolithic sites, Karahan Tepe, Sefer Tepe, Çakmak Tepe, have emerged, forming what researchers call a ritual landscape. Together, they represent the earliest known tradition of monumental architecture on Earth. This land did not produce a single miracle. It produced a movement. Geographically, southeastern Turkey spans roughly 400 kilometers, from Gaziantep in the west to Şırnak in the east, covering approximately 75,000 square kilometers. Its terrain shifts dramatically. Arid steppes dissolve into fertile river valleys. Basalt plateaus bristle with tells, or artificial mounds built by millennia of human habitation. Rugged mountains rise like sentinels, once shaping migration routes and trade corridors between Anatolia, the Levant, and Persia. These natural boundaries did not isolate people, they connected them. Over thousands of years, this region became a crossroads for Sumerians, Akkadians, Assyrians, Romans, Byzantines, Arabs, Seljuks, and Ottomans, each layering new cultures atop the old, much like the archaeological strata beneath modern towns. Today, more than 8 million people live here, the majority Kurdish, inheritors of a landscape shaped by endurance. Their traditions, hospitality rituals, communal meals, oral storytelling, reverence for land, mirror ancient patterns of social cohesion forged in the Neolithic age. Climate has always tested this resilience. Summers routinely exceed 40 degrees C, baking the plains under relentless sun. Winters, especially in higher elevations near Diyarbakır and Hakkari, bring snow and biting cold. These extremes shaped early innovation, seasonal planning, food storage, architectural adaptation, and continue to define life today. The modern name for this area, the Southeastern Anatolia region, or GAP, reflects contemporary development projects centered on the great rivers. But beneath dams and cities lies a deeper truth. Every road here crosses ground once walked by the first builders, the first ritual leaders, the first communities who chose permanence over wandering. This is not merely a region of ruins. It is a threshold in human history, the moment when belief gathered people, when stone outlasted bone, when the idea of home was born. And as Kurdish tea is poured beneath fig trees, as children play atop ancient mounds unaware of their age, the land continues its quiet dialogue with the present. Civilization began here, and it never truly left. Beneath these plains lies a deeper archive, one written not by human hands, but by the earth itself. Geologically, southeastern Turkey is a palimpsest of deep time. The bedrock beneath Upper Mesopotamia was shaped during the Eocene epoch, roughly 50 million years ago, when ancient seas advanced and retreated, laying down thick sedimentary layers of limestone, marl, and sandstone. These strata would later cradle fossils, stone tools, and the earliest architectural experiments of humankind, each layer a chapter in a story far older than civilization. Volcanic forces followed. Basalt flows and ash deposits, particularly across Anatolia's plateaus, rejuvenated the soil, infusing it with minerals that would sustain agriculture for thousands of years. Long before irrigation canals or dams, this land was naturally primed for productivity, a rare ecological convergence that made permanent settlement possible. Life flourished accordingly. Ecologically, the region remains a biodiversity crossroads. Wild pistachio and almond groves, ancestors of today's cultivated trees, still dot the hills, just as they did when early humans foraged their nuts and fruits. River systems support wetlands where rare species endure, including the Mesopotamian soft-shelled turtle, a living relic whose lineage stretches back millions of years. Birds migrate along ancient flyways. Wild sheep once grazed these steppes. Every ecosystem here echoes the same truth. This land could sustain life year-round. It is no coincidence that humanity paused here. Our journey now descends further, into the moment when survival transformed into society. Human presence in southeastern Turkey reaches back into the Paleolithic, with stone tools attesting to tens of thousands of years of seasonal hunting and migration. But the true rupture, the moment history bends, arrives during the pre-pottery Neolithic, between 10,000 and 8,000 BCE. This was not evolution by accident. It was adaptation under pressure. At the close of the last ice age, Earth plunged briefly back into cold. The Younger Dryas, a sudden climatic reversal from roughly 10,900 to 9,700 BCE, shortened growing seasons and destabilized ecosystems across the Near East. Game became scarce, predictability vanished. Humanity responded not by retreating, but by innovating. As temperatures rose again in the early Holocene, southeastern Turkey emerged as a refuge. Wild cereals, einkorn wheat, emmer, and barley thrived across its limestone hills and river valleys. For the first time, people did not merely gather these grasses. They returned to them, protected them, experimented. At sites such as Chayonu, archaeologists have uncovered clear evidence of this transformation. Stone-built houses arranged in planned layouts, grinding stones worn smooth by repeated use, and botanical remains showing gradual domestication rather than sudden invention. Lentils, peas, chickpeas, plants still central to Middle Eastern cuisine, appear here among the earliest cultivated crops on Earth. Genetic research into modern cereals confirms what the stones already suggest. Southeastern Turkey was a primary center of plant domestication. These were not borrowed ideas. They were born here. Yet agriculture alone does not explain what followed. At the same moment people began cultivating plants, they were also erecting monuments, gathering for rituals whose meanings still elude us. Stone circles rose before villages. Symbol preceded surplus. Belief preceded bureaucracy. This challenges one of archaeology's oldest assumptions, that farming created civilization. Here, it seems civilization created farming, and the legacy endures. Modern cultural practices, communal meals, reverence for guests, shared labor, storytelling passed orally across generations, mirror the social glue first forged in these Neolithic communities. Hospitality here is not etiquette, it is inheritance. So as we traverse these landscapes, across pistachio groves and basalt hills, through ruins older than writing, we are not merely traveling through space. We are moving through layers of time. Every stone tells a story. Every shared meal revives an ancient bond. And every act of welcome echoes the moment when humanity first chose to belong, to place, to people, to memory. This is where settlement began, and where its spirit still lives. The stones begin to speak. Across southeastern Turkey, archaeology does more than suggest. It reveals. Layer by layer, excavation after excavation, a vivid portrait emerges of humanity at the threshold of transformation. Our trail opens at Halan Chemi, dated to around 10,500 BCE. Here, on a modest rise near the Batman River, early communities built circular huts with stone, foundations, anchoring structures to ground they had once only passed through. Inside, basalt grinding slabs, worn smooth by countless hands, tell of wild grains processed daily. Nearby, finely knapped obsidian tools, razor-sharp and jet black, trace their origin to volcanic sources such as Nemrut Da, over 100 kilometers away. This was not opportunistic living, it was planning. By 9000 BCE, settlements like Nivaluchori reveal an even deeper shift. Communal buildings emerge, rectangular structures with lime plaster floors, an innovation requiring controlled fire and chemical knowledge. Walls bear symbolic reliefs, stylized human figures and animals suggesting shared cosmology. These were spaces not just for shelter, but for gathering, and these communities were not isolated islands in time. Trade networks extended far beyond the local horizon. Obsidian from Anatolian volcanoes moved south and west. In return came Mediterranean shells, pigments, and rare materials, objects with no practical purpose, but immense symbolic value. Exchange fostered relationships. Relationships fostered identity. Identity fostered complexity. Recent science reinforces what artifacts imply. Genomic research published in 2022 demonstrates that these early populations were not homogeneous. They were a genetic mosaic, Levantine hunter-gatherers intermingling with Anatolian foragers, their descendants carrying this blended heritage outward into Europe and Central Asia. The Neolithic was not a single spark, it was a convergence. Innovation followed rapidly. Basketry, woven from reeds and fibers, enabled storage long before pottery hardened clay. Early ceramic experiments, plaster-lined containers and fired figurines, foreshadowed the vessels that would later define settled life. Burials became symbolic, bodies placed deliberately, sometimes with offerings, marking memory, ancestry, and belonging. Humanity was no longer merely surviving, it was imagining. And at the epicenter of this imagining stands one site above all others, Göbekli Tepe, a hill of the navel, a revolution in stone. Discovered in 1994 by German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt during a survey conducted for the University of Heidelberg and the German Archaeological Institute, Göbekli Tepe rises from a limestone plateau 15 kilometers northeast of Şanlıurfa, at 760 meters above sea level. What Schmidt initially believed to be a medieval mound soon revealed itself as something far older and far more profound. Excavations beginning in 1995 uncovered a series of monumental circular enclosures, over 20 identified so far, each ranging from 10 to 30 meters in diameter. At their centers stand towering T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing up to 10 tons, carved with reliefs of foxes, snakes, boars, birds, and abstract symbols whose meanings remain fiercely debated. Radiocarbon dating places their construction between 9,600 and 8,800 BCE. This is the shock. These structures predate agriculture. They predate pottery. They predate metal. Yet they required organized labor, logistical planning, and a shared belief powerful enough to mobilize hundreds of people, hunter-gatherers, into sustained communal effort. Stone was quarried, transported, carved, and erected with astonishing precision. There is no evidence of permanent domestic life here. Göbekli Tepe was not a village, it was a destination, a place where people gathered across seasons and regions, a ceremonial center that suggests belief, ritual, myth, shared identity came before farming, not after. That it was meaning, not food, that first bound humans together. After centuries of use, The enclosures were deliberately buried, sealed with care, preserved for millennia, an intentional act, a closing of a chapter whose reasons we may never fully know. Since 2014, excavations led by Turkish archaeologists have continued Schmidt's work, revealing new layers and expanding the story. Each season raises new questions and deepens the mystery. Göbekli Tepe does not merely rewrite the timeline of civilization. It redefines its cause, from wandering to building, from tool-making to meaning-making, from survival to society. Here, on this plateau overlooking the Mesopotamian plains, humanity did not just change how it lived, it changed why. Stand closer, Ao. Let the stones speak in detail. The pillars of Göbekli Tepe are not inert slabs. They are figures quarried directly from the limestone bedrock less than 100 meters away. These monoliths were carved, transported, and erected using stone tools alone. No metal, no wheels, no beasts of burden. Each T-shaped pillar rises between 3 and 5.5 meters, its surface smoothed with astonishing care. And look closely. Many bear carved arms folded across the torso, hands meeting at a belt or loincloth. These are not decorations. They are anthropomorphic forms, stylized humans, perhaps ancestors, spirits, or deities, standing in silent assembly. The horizontal top of the T suggests a head, the vertical shaft, a body. In this reading, the stone circles become gatherings of beings, watchers enclosing a sacred space. Across their surfaces unfolds a bestiary unlike any other from this era. More than 60 animal species appear in relief. Lions and leopards, foxes and wild boar, snakes coiled in motion, scorpions poised to strike, birds frozen mid-flight. Some animals recur obsessively, as if carrying specific meanings. Others appear once, enigmatic and deliberate. Interspersed among them are abstract symbols, H-shapes, crescents, chevrons, circles, marks without obvious precedent. Some researchers interpret these as a symbolic language, others as clan emblems, mythic narratives, or even a proto-astronomical system encoding celestial events. The debate deepens with recent revelations. In 2025, Turkey's Ministry of Culture announced discoveries that push interpretation further than ever before. A T-shaped pillar bearing a carved human face, the first confirmed facial depiction at Göbekli Tepe. Its eyes stare forward. Its expression is unmistakably intentional. Nearby, archaeologists uncovered group figurines clustered together as if mid-ritual, hinting not at solitary worship, but collective ceremony. Göbekli Tepe, it seems, was not an anomaly. It was a node. Just 35 kilometers east, at Karahan Tepe, the picture expands dramatically. Discovered in 1997 and now a cornerstone of the Taş Tepeler Stone Hills project, this site has yielded 266 standing pillars, far exceeding Göbekli Tepe in number. Dated to around 9,400 BCE, Karahan Tepe includes a life-sized human statue emerging directly from bedrock, its gaze downward, its form eerily intimate. Together with sites like Sayburq, Sefer Tepe, and Takmak Tepe, these places form a regional ritual network, a constellation of sacred centers built by semi-nomadic groups who gathered seasonally, not to live, but to commune. What drew them? The answer lies in ritual. Klaus Schmidt famously argued that these were sanctuaries, not settlements, spaces reserved for shamanic practice, initiation rites, and cosmological storytelling. Recent research supports this view. The lack of domestic debris, no hearths, no trash pits, suggests that everyday life happened elsewhere. What happened here was extraordinary. Some scholars point skyward. Alignments within the enclosures appear to correlate with constellations such as Cygnus, the swan, prominent in the northern sky during key seasonal transitions. Others propose that these monuments marked solstices, or even encoded memories of catastrophic celestial events. comet impacts theorized to have contributed to the Younger Dryas climate disruption. The sky, the animals, the stones, everything converges. And then there are the feasts. Bone analysis reveals thousands of gazelle remains, alongside aurochs, wild sheep, and deer. These were not casual meals. They were massive communal banquets, requiring coordinated hunts across wide territories. Some researchers suggest these gatherings may have included early fermented beverages, brewed from wild grains, proto-beer, used not for sustenance, but for ceremony. Food as ritual, ritual as glue. In these feasts, these carvings, these alignments, we glimpse the engine of civilization, social cohesion, belief systems strong enough to bind strangers, stories powerful enough to organize labor, rituals compelling enough to bring people back year after year, before cities, before fields of wheat, before kings. Here, in stone circles under open sky, humanity learned to gather not just to survive, but to belong. Göbekli Tepe and its sister sites do not answer all our questions. They ask better ones. Who were we before history began? And what did we believe was worth building? For eternity, the story grows darker and deeper. Among the most unsettling discoveries emerging from the stone hills are the human skulls themselves. Not buried and forgotten, but modified, marked, and remembered. At Göbekli Tepe and related sites, archaeologists have uncovered human skulls deliberately grooved, drilled, and incised with symbols. These were not acts of violence. They were acts of meaning. Grooves along the cranium suggest the skulls were suspended with cords, possibly displayed during ceremonies. Cut marks indicate defleshing, a careful separation of flesh from bone, ritual, not brutality. Scholars describe this as a skull cult, a system of ancestor veneration in which the dead remained present among the living. Ancestors were not gone. They were participants, mediators between worlds, guardians of memory, embodiments of lineage and identity. At Karahan Tepe, discoveries announced in 2025 sharpen this picture. A small stone figurine with stitched lips emerged from excavation, its mouth deliberately sealed. Silence, secrecy, vows. Nearby, beads carved with expressive human faces suggest storytelling through adornment, worn narratives that signaled status, initiation, or belonging. These were not mute societies. They were symbolically fluent. Archaeologists now believe these rituals unfolded through music, rhythm, movement, and altered states of consciousness. The architecture itself, enclosed stone circles with resonant acoustics, suggests chanting and percussion. Chemical analysis of vessels has revealed residues consistent with psychoactive plants and early fermented beverages, hinting at trance-inducing rites guided by shamans. This spiritual framework did not vanish. It echoes forward into later Mesopotamian religions, where ancestor worship, sacred feasting, symbolic animals, and cosmic order remain central themes. What we see here is not a dead end, but a root system. Then, around 8000 BCE, something extraordinary happens. Göbekli Tepe is intentionally buried, not abandoned, not destroyed, but carefully filled, layer upon layer of soil, stone, and debris sealing the enclosures like a time capsule. This was a deliberate act repeated across the site. Why? Many scholars suggest a cultural turning point. As agriculture intensified, communities dispersed to tend fields and herds. Seasonal ritual centers gave way to permanent villages. The old sanctuaries were closed, perhaps respectfully retired, perhaps ritually completed. But closure does not mean erasure. The legacy lived on, in memory, in social structures, in communal ethics that still define the region today. And Göbekli Tepe was never alone. Across the surrounding plains, a constellation of sites fills in the larger picture. At Karahan Tepe, just 46 kilometers east, more than 250 pillars across 15 enclosures reveal a ceremonial complex as sophisticated as Göbekli's. One hall features phallic symbols, another a stone-lined cistern, suggesting water-based rites tied to fertility, renewal, or cosmology. The broader Taş Tepeler project now documents at least 12 interconnected ritual hills. At Cybers, reliefs depict human figures confronting leopards, scenes interpreted as myth, initiation, or the struggle between chaos and order. To the north, Sayonu, near modern Diyarbakir, bridges ritual and settlement. Here, archaeologists uncovered skull buildings, structures dedicated to ancestor remains, alongside the earliest evidence of animal domestication and plant cultivation. Ritual and subsistence intertwine. At Göbekli Tepe, over 2,000 intramural burials, the dead placed beneath house floors, reveal an intimate relationship between the living and their ancestors. Death was not hidden away. It was integrated into daily life. Taken together, these sites force a reckoning. The Neolithic revolution was not driven solely by hunger or climate. It was driven by ideas, by ritual innovation, shared belief, and social imagination. This directly challenges Gordon Child's 1920s theory, which argued that agriculture created social complexity. Here, the evidence says otherwise. Social complexity came first. Farming followed. Humanity did not settle down because it learned to grow food. It grew food because it had learned how to gather meaningfully. In these skulls, these stones, these buried sanctuaries, we glimpse the moment our species became more than a collection of survivors. We became communities bound by memory, ritual, and story. And in southeastern Turkey, where hospitality is still sacred, where ancestors are still named, where gatherings still matter, that ancient bond endures. The first civilization was not built with bricks. It was built with belief. Yet the legacy of humanity's cradle is not confined to stone and soil. It lives, breathing, speaking, welcoming in the people of southeastern Turkey. Here, Kurdish communities, comprising roughly 1/5 of Turkey's population and deeply rooted in this region, carry forward traditions that echo humanity's earliest social bonds, central. Among them is misafir perverlik, hospitality not as etiquette, but as obligation. To receive a stranger is to honor the sacred. In villages surrounding Şanlıurfa, guests are welcomed not cautiously, but fully. Meals unfold as communal rituals, lahmacun pulled fresh from clay ovens, vine-wrapped dolma, pistachio-laced baklava shared around low tables. Food is not served to impress, it is shared to bind. The gesture mirrors Neolithic feasts, where collective meals forged alliances and reaffirmed belonging. Stories follow the food. Kurdish folklore, passed orally across generations, speaks of ancient mountains, ancestral spirits, and unseen forces inhabiting the land. These narratives resonate powerfully with the shamanic symbolism carved into Göbekli Tepe's pillars. The tradition of dengbej, storytellers chanting epics by firelight, recalls a time when memory, music, and myth preserved knowledge long before writing. Despite centuries of upheaval, political tensions, displacement, and the pressures of modernization, these customs endure. Visitors are still received as kin, sheltered, fed, listened to. Hospitality remains a moral constant, bridging not just cultures, but millennia. And in that continuity lies the deeper truth. The rituals that once gathered hunter-gatherers beneath stone circles now gather families around hearths. The impulse is the same: to connect, to remember, to belong. As the sun sets over these ancient plains, southeastern Turkey reminds us that civilization did not begin with cities or kings, but with shared rituals and enduring bonds. From Göbekli Tepe's silent stones to Kurdish homes alive with warmth, the past is not distant. It is present. Venture here, walk the hills, listen to the stories, accept the invitation. The cradle of civilization still holds its children. Thank you for this journey through time. Subscribe for more explorations of humanity's hidden origins. Until next time, let the plains reveal their secrets.